Chapter 116 of Married Thrice to Salted Fish. Laifu hastily packed the Emperor's luggage for his trip out of the palace. The Empress Dowager wished more than anything to follow the Emperor to the general's mansion, but out of concern over her own identity, she ultimately decided against it. Instead, she ordered Shu Junyan to accompany the Emperor. Shu Junyan be like, guys, I am so grateful that you kind of like let in on the secret of soul transfer, and I'm more than grateful that I saw it not once but twice. But don't you think you guys have been using me left and right and treating me like a servant? For God's sakes, I'm a national teacher. Junction's muddy hands were washed clean by Shah Songsi. Then, completely at the mercy of the servants, he was made to change into ordinary robes. Laifu then helped him into the carriage. While the two weren't paying attention, Junction's sluggish eyes suddenly congealed with intellect, which Shu Junyan quickly noticed. Shu Junyan, understanding implicitly, said, I shall ride with the Emperor. His Majesty will be comfortably safe in my care. They set off for the general's mansion. Laifu and Shah Songsi were seated outside, driving and steering the carriage, while Shu Junyan and Junction sat inside. Deliberately keeping their voices low, the sound of clattering horse hooves were enough to drown out their conversation. This humble minister is overwhelmed by your Majesty's trust, Shu Junyan said helplessly. You didn't even tell me in advance. Weren't you afraid I might spill the truth to Her Highness the Empress Dowager? Jiang Xin said, haven't you always stood on Zhen's side? Besides, even if you had told her the truth, the Empress Dowager might not necessarily believe you. Shu Junyan let out a faint sigh. The Emperor's wisdom is all spent on how to marry Prime Minister Lin. If His Majesty were but to bend his mind towards government affairs, what a blessing it would be to be the Dayu. That will have to wait until I get to marry him back, Jiang Xin said casually. However, I'm still curious, why do you always help us? Shu Junyan said calmly, because Zhang Gongxi's lot is to be the ruler of all under heaven, the master of the throne. Since I'm fortunate enough to get a glimpse of this mystery known only to heaven, naturally I will help Zhang Gongxi. Maybe if the Son of Heaven is pleased with my service, he will see it fit to order renovations to Chanseng Temple. To be honest, the meditation room where I practice my cultivation is a tad bit small. Jiang Xin scoffed. That's it? That's it. Shu Junyan smiled and said, there is no need for the Emperor to think highly of me. In the end, I'm just a man of cultivation. Jiang Xin laughed, not in any mood to banter with Shu Junyan. Only the stupidest of fools would believe such nonsense. For these 5 long years, Shu Junyan hasn't changed at all. He was still a mystery within a mystery. In any case, his purpose has been achieved. A few days ago, the Empress Dowager was thinking up of every means to prevent him from clinging to his wife. Today, she was practically pushing him to his wife's house. It hadn't been in vain that he played with enough mud to build another Xinqing palace. After the news of Lin Qingyu's illness spread, many officials sent letters expressing their wish to visit the sick. Although they were turned away, the gifts they sent to the mansion were returned one by one. When the Emperor's carriage stopped at the gate of the general's mansion, Lin Qingyu was in the middle of preparing a winter nest for the 2 little goose. He didn't know if it was because of Jiang Xin's influence, but he was beginning to like this kind of leisurely life. There was no need to go to court, no need to worry about state affairs, and no need to meet all kinds of officials of the court. When he had nothing to do, he read medical books and formulated prescriptions. Occasionally, he would have discussions about Gu with the genius doctor from the southern border. He could even go to the Imperial Medical Office to teach a few classes. This was much more interesting than being the court's prime minister. After resting a few days, he had a new view on the word salted fish. Being salted fish wasn't doing nothing. Rather, it was being free from the pressure of external forces, having one's time at one's own disposal. Janshin's hobbies were playing and sleeping. If he wasn't allowed to play and sleep, he would get tired. While his hobby was medicine, if he was made to abandon his medical skills and turn his mind exclusively to other things, he would also get tired. Put this way, he also wanted to be salted fish. It was a pity that there had to be someone between him and Jiangxing to worry about external forces, so that the other can be salted fish with no other distractions. Qingyu, Mother Lin came in with a bowl of bird's nest soup. Come, this is a fresh one from the pot. Have a taste. Mother Lin heard that her eldest son was ill, so she went to visit the general's mansion. When Lu Wancheng passed away of illness, Lin Qingyu suffered from a bout of serious illness. Seeing that the anniversary of General Gu's death was approaching, she felt really worried. Fortunately, Lin Qingyu was suffering from a seasonal cold. His condition was far from being bedridden. Mother Lin didn't know why Lin Qingyu lied about being seriously ill, but he must have his reasons for doing so. She and her husband have never interfered with their eldest son's decisions. Lin Qingyu smiled lightly. Thank you, Mother. Mother Lin was now the Prime Minister's mother and thus a titled lady, but her life carried on as usual. She was always thinking about doing things for her sons. Some things should be told to family in advance. Lin Qingyu took a couple of sips and said, Mother? As soon as Mother Lin heard Lin Qingyu's tone, she knew that he had something to say. She said softly, What's the matter? Lin Qingyu considered his words. I want to have one last marriage. Mother Lin was momentarily stunned. Remembering the reason for Lin Qingyu's second marriage, she said nervously, Is there anyone who's forcing you again? Lin Qingyu smiled and shook his head. No, this time I'm doing so completely out of my own free will. Not because of some imperial decree or to avoid someone who was coveting him. He sincerely wanted to marry Jiangxin again. Mother Lin was surprised and also puzzled. She knew very well her eldest son's temperament. He was cold and indifferent to others. His tenderness was reserved only for those he cared about. He had obviously taken both Lu Wancheng and Gu Fuzhao into his heart. So, who was this who was able to squeeze past his two predecessors and get Lin Qingyu to say the words, completely out of my own free will? But when she saw Lin Qingyu's inadvertent tenderness, her heart softened. She still didn't ask much, only saying, Since it's your wish, I don't think young Master Hao and General Gu would mind. She could see the respect these two had for Lin Qingyu. Lin Qingyu smiled. Indeed. While mother and son were talking, they heard Huan Tong's voice from outside. Madam, the Emperor is here. Mother Lin was surprised. Why would His Majesty come to the General's mansion? Lin Qingyu laughed softly. Who knows? Let's go and have a look. Lin Qingyu took the whole family to pick him up at the door. Seeing Jiang Sheng, he coughed softly, knelt down, and saluted. He said, voice weak, "This humble minister greets His Majesty." Instantly, brilliance reappeared in Jiang Sheng's gloomy eyes. Lin Qingyu felt amused when he saw it. Such acting skills. He himself couldn't compare. Prime Minister Gege. Jiang Shen hugged Lin Qingyu's waist in front of everyone and said with a smile, "I have got you now." Lin Qingyu tried his best to look surprised. "Your Majesty?" Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Only Xu Junyan sighed and said, "This is heaven's will." Seeing this, Lai Fu quickly sent someone back to the palace to report to the Empress Dowager. Mixed feelings in the Empress Dowager's heart upon hearing this. The national teacher was right. Lin Qingyu was the emperor's only cure. After a good long time, she heaved a long sigh. So long as the emperor is well, Aja no longer cares about anything else. This time, she truly accepted it. So long as the emperor's soul loss disease does not recur, the emperor can cling to whoever he wants. Afterwards, the Empress Dowager sent a message to the general's mansion asking Lin Chengyu to move into the palace for the duration of his recuperation. However, Lin Chengyu declined on the grounds that outside ministers were not allowed to stay overnight in the palace. The Empress Dowager was baffled. Lin Chengyu had already been staying at the palace for far longer than just a day or two. What was the use of bringing up the rule at this time? Lin Chengyu didn't want to go to the palace, and the emperor couldn't do without him. And so, the only solution was to have the emperor visit the general's mansion often. Wasn't this an even bigger disregard of the rules? After a few days, news of the emperor's frequent visits to the general's mansion spread like wildfire. Many of those who disapproved of Lin Chengyu suddenly had a flash of realization. From the very beginning, this wasn't the prime minister overstepping his authority, rather, the emperor pestering his minister, cum minister's wife. At this time, Jiang Sheng was in General Gu's mansion, with his head resting on the laps of his minister's wife. After hearing Shah Sangxi's report on the gossip in the capital, he said, "It's about time. It's time to move on to the next step." Lin Chengyu said, "Shah Sangxi, go and invite Shen Gongxi to come here." Shah Sangxi acknowledged the command. Then he heard the emperor ask him, "How did you find Shen Gongxi before?" Shah Sangxi said, replying to His Majesty, "Shen Gongxi has bought a courtyard in the capital. This servant usually sends a messenger there to look for him." Jiang Sheng was overtaken by a whim. "Chengyu, you have been staying in the mansion for so long. Aren't you bored? Why don't we go out for a short trip? Treat it as a visit to a friend." A friend? Shen Haoshi was indeed a friend of the both of them. Lin Chengyu nodded and ordered Yan Yan to prepare a gift for visiting friends. The two changed their clothes and went out in a carriage. Shen Haoshi's courtyard is located in quite a remote area. Even on horseback, it would take an hour to reach. When he arrived at the place, Jiang Sheng got out of the carriage first. He then turned around and stretched out his hand. Lin Chengyu got out of the car, holding his hand for support. They looked at the house in front of them. It was a simple and unsophisticated house, like somewhere a wealthy but ordinary citizen would live. That it was away from the hustle and bustle of the crowds was also in line with Shen Haoshi's taciturn temperament. Shah Songsi was about to knock on the door when he heard a crazed and desperate voice from inside. Oh my gosh. I have thrown away everything, even my country for you. I have remained in this god awful place for 2 years just to see you, but you won't even look at me straight. Fine, alright. But now you want to leave? Where will you go? Shenhaoshi? What do you think I am? A dog to look after your house? I knew it. I knew it. Lin Qingyu and Jiang Xing looked at each other, their expressions inscrutable. Stop talking, Shen Haoshi said calmly. Someone's here. Then it fell quiet inside the house. Not long after, the door was opened. When Shen Haoshi saw them, he was not at all surprised. Your subject greets your majesty and your excellency. Lin Qingyu said. How did you know it was us? Shen Haoshi said. The sound of the gears of the emperor's carriage is different from the others' carriages. Your majesty, Prime Minister Lin, please come inside. The two walked into the yard. They saw no one except Shen Haoshi. Shen Haoshi invited him into the guest hall. He brewed a pot of tea and said, There is only crude tea here. Prime Minister Lin might not be used to it. Lin Qingyu took the teacup and then the lid. Just now, I heard someone say you are leaving. Where are you going? Jiang Xing said casually. Where else would he go? He wants to go back to the northwest. Shen Haoshi pursed his lips. After General Gu passed away, General Wu was ordered to stay and guard the northwest. I should be able to help him if I go back. Lin Qingyu was pensive. I wanted to rebuild the Heavenly Prison sect, but if you insist on leaving, Shen Haoshi was stunned. Rebuild the Heavenly Prison sect? Although Shaojie and the Tianji camp remain loyal only to the Son of Heaven, I still can't trust them because of the matter with Shirong and the change of power in the palace. I hope that after the reconstruction of the Heavenly Prison sect, it can compete with the Tianji camp and even supersede it. Jiang Xing joked, It's a lifetime duty to recast the glory of the Heavenly Prison sect. Lin Qingyu had said it so suddenly, Shen Haoshi was not at all prepared. He thought for a while, then said hesitantly, Your Majesty, Prime Minister Lin, will you allow me a few days to think about it? Of course, whether you want to leave or stay is all up to you, Lin Qingyu pointed out. You do not need to take anyone else into account. Jiang Xing said, By the way, we have come here this time to ask one more thing of you. On the day of Gu Fuzhao's death anniversary, the palace invited eminent monks from Chanseng Temple to chant scriptures and pray for Gu Fuzhao as a comfort for his departed spirit. Wu Zhan, Wu Gaogong, Shen Haoshi, Li Chan and others were allowed by the Empress Dowager to come to Imperial Ancestral Temple to attend the ceremony and burn incense for Gu Fuzhao. Lin Qingyu is Gu Fuzhao's wife and his only family member, but he was unable to attend such an important day due to illness. Afterwards, Li Chan suggested that they go to the general's mansion to visit the Prime Minister. If he went alone, Prime Minister Lin would probably not meet with him. But with so many confidants together, Prime Minister Lin might give them some face. Shen Haoshi raised his head and looked at the snow falling from the darkened sky. He said, voice deep, A year ago, it was also on such a snowy day that the general... They were all carrying a heavy heart, and they looked at each other, unable to say anything. Shen Haoshi went on. Yesterday, I dreamt about the general again. The general asked after Prime Minister Lin. He asked how he'd been this past year. He didn't like seeing Prime Minister Lin getting sick from missing him. He didn't want him to remain and die alone. Wu Zhan was emotionally moved. Recklessly pointing at himself, he said, I I dreamt about him too. The general wants us to strike at Shishia's capital, tear out the Shishia's king's tongue, fry it, and drink it with wine. After Shen Haoshi finished speaking the words they'd prepared in advance, he didn't know what else to say. After hesitating for a moment, he said, my dream seemed so real, like a Tao Meng. My dream felt more real. Wu Zhan, this big burly man, had eyes rimmed red once again. The general must have come back to see me. Man, Wu Zhan, stop being a blocker, okay? This is not a competition. Wu Gaogang seemed to think that Shen Haoshi's dream was more like a Tao Meng and said, It's been a year. Prime Minister Lin's period of marital piety has passed. It's time for me to fulfill Fu Zhao's last wish. Ooh, like I always sensed Shao Cheng's death was so freaking quick. I know that he went into a coma and stuff, but I always thought something not right. I always thought he was still alive. I thought probably Lin Qingyu's teacher came to save him. I actually thought he would come to save him when he got stabbed initially when Lin Qingyu was unwilling to help him. But we never got to see Lin Qingyu's teacher. But we also have that drug that Shen Haoshi have from Lin Qingyu. So it was super plausible, but I never saw that hesitation from Shen Haoshi. Like he always was ready to go to Northwest, protect General Gu and listen to Lin Qingyu. So there was a little bit of doubt, but also no evidence for me to think that he was alive. But I'm glad. I'm glad he's alive and not in a position of power. I hope he tempers his anger a little bit and have an introspect on his behavior and change his past ways. Then probably Shen Haoshi might forgive him, and in a couple of years, who knows, you might have a romance of yourself. So, Shao Cheng, don't be a dick and learn how to be a green flag to Shen Haoshi. He deserves that happiness and a good partner who is supportive and nice and loves him, not just freakishly throws him into a freaking bed.